The Z fighters split up and go separately to search around the city, trying to find the androids before they attack. They continue to search, not really finding anything of note until Yamcha spikes his power. Jiro struck him through the chest, but thankfully Slug was nearby. He charged in and punched Jiro off Yamcha before he gave him a senzu bean. Slug then got up and looked sternly at Jiro, while the doctor smiled seeing Slug. The rest of the Z gang soon shows up, and Goku tells the two androids to bring this fight somewhere else. So they leave and go to a nearby island. Now here, things would actually go pretty similar to the original. 19 and Jiro would be around the strength of the grade 4 Super Saiyans here, basically being the same threat they were in Canon. So Goku fights 19 and the heart virus still kicks in, and Yamcha brings him back to his house. Then Vegeta jumps in and fights 19 with his Super Saiyan, finally killing him as well. Afterwards, Piccolo would use his Kaioken to speed blitz Jiro, making sure that he can't go anywhere. With his pretty massive Kaioken multiplier, Piccolo would arguably be even stronger than the Mastered Super Saiyans here. But even though Piccolo is much more powerful here, Jiro is able to eventually escape and loses Piccolo in the process. Though this is not for long, and the doctor knows that. He rushes as fast as he can back to his lab, taking advantage of the fact that his energy cannot be sensed. Piccolo, along with the rest of the Z fighters, quickly go after Jiro, searching for his lab. Jiro is able to make it back to his lab after some time, where he activates not only the androids, but also the Slug drug as well. While Slug and Krillin are on the ground searching, they finally discover the lab and inform everybody else. As the two make their way towards the lab, Slug feels a sharp pain in his neck. His mind begins to go blank as he finally reaches the lab, while inside of it, the androids kill Jiro before they release Android 16. Slug attempts to resist the drug, suppressing his power more and more in the process. While Slug is struggling to keep control over himself, Vegeta blows up the door to the lab and talks him smack to the androids. 17 notices Slug trying to resist the drug, so he fires a ki blast at him, which forces Slug to defend himself. With Slug taking his focus off of resisting, the drug takes effect and amplifies Slug's latent Super Namekian gene. Slug then falls to the ground with a loud thud, completely unconscious, before the androids go to fight the Z fighters. Even with Vegeta and Piccolo being much stronger here, they'd be thrown around by the androids. 18 still breaks Vegeta's arm, and 17 was smack around the other Z fighters. Piccolo and Tien with their maximum Kaioken multipliers are actually able to do some decent work on 17, but they can't use this for long and get knocked out of it due to 17 outlasting them. The only other fighter besides them who's able to put some really good work on 17 is Future Trunks with the Super Saiyan 2 form. But even with this power, the android is able to outlast the Super Saiyan due to his infinite energy, like what he did with Tien and Piccolo before, leading to Trunks being knocked back into base and beaten around. After the duo have had enough, they, along with 16, would get ready to leave, but before that, 18 would still kiss Krillin, and finally, 17, 18, and 16 would leave to find Goku. As the androids left, Slug began to slowly wake up. Krillin then went to give everybody a senzu bean, and finally went to give Slug one too. He could tell that Slug was in really bad shape and put the senzu in his mouth, but as Slug began to chew, he threw his arm up and grabbed Krillin by the throat, digging his nails into his neck. Piccolo notices this, remembering what Bulma and Trunks had said. Trunks himself notices this as well, and both him and Piccolo realize they've got a massive problem on their hands now. Kami, up on the lookout, began to tear up at this sight. He's shocked and saddened at the loss of his friend. No, the loss of his brother. Slug then finished eating the senzu, his eyes bulging open with them being red, as he was now in his Super Namekian form. His red aura exploded outwards, forcing everybody there to shield themselves as Lord Slug had now been awakened. Vegeta, who was getting ready to fly away, even had to shield himself from this as well. Krillin then began to gag as Slug continued to hold his grip on the dwarf, beginning to slowly squeeze the life out of him. Piccolo quickly throws off his weights, telling Trunks that he will hold off Slug for as long as he can, and that he needs to get the antidote. Yamcha was off with Goku to help give him the heart virus medicine, but he also had the cure for Slug, so he'd have to hold off Slug until they could get the antidote over here to cure him. Trunks nods, quickly flying off as fast as he can towards Yamcha and Goku's location. Piccolo tells Tien to get out of here as well, but the human refuses. He isn't just gonna run away now, and the two nod to each other. Both of them then yell as they burst into a Kaioken times 30, charging in and punching Slug across the back of the head, catching him off guard and forcing him to drop Krillin. Krillin quickly jumped back, grabbing his throat as it swelled purple. The two begin to fight with Slug, trying to appeal to him, get him to calm down, like what Piccolo did on Namek, but Slug just isn't there at all. No matter how much they try talking, none of it works. Slug would quickly push his power higher, forcing Piccolo and Tien to use high levels of the Kaioken. The maximum that both can use without a massive amount of difficulty is 30 times, and Piccolo can only use 75 times for very short bursts in battle, while Tien can only use 50 times for very short bursts. Because of this, Slug would eventually get the advantage and started to clobber the two around. Nearby, Vegeta would have been simply watching the fight, but before he can even do anything, happening, Slug knocks Piccolo and Tien away as he charges at the prince. Vegeta immediately goes into Super Saiyan, trying to defend himself, but he's no match at all against Slug either. He gets pummeled around, and Slug slams him into the ground. He then laughs, saying he expected much more from a Super Saiyan, as he crushes Vegeta's recently restored arm, breaking it again. Vegeta screams out in pain, and Slug goes in to break his right arm as well, but he's struck across the face and sent flying back. Slug stops himself, seeing Piccolo and Tien had used their maximum Kaioken in a brief burst to send him back. They are panting heavily, barely having any energy left, but they wouldn't give up yet. Piccolo even helps and anger Vegeta up, with the three staring down the Super Namekian. Slug let out a primal scream as he charged at them, barreling through their defenses. Even with the pretty solid teamwork of Piccolo and Tenshinhan, plus Vegeta being there, it still isn't anything compared to Slug. He laughs as he states that this is where they will die. Slug then coats his fist in a crimson red aura before he slams it into Tien, knocking him out cold and sending him flying through a bunch of mountains. Now, it was just Piccolo and Vegeta left. They knew they had no other choice and got ready to fight to the death. Even with just one arm, Vegeta would still keep fighting, and Piccolo would never stop until he could get Slug back. As Slug charged him again, a blast from nearby knocked him back. He angrily looked up, seeing that Trunks had arrived onto the battlefield, landing next to Vegeta and Piccolo. Using this brief distraction, Piccolo healed both himself and Vegeta. Trunks showed them the cure, and Piccolo smiled, but all three of them knew it wouldn't be as simple as just injecting it into Slug. He wasn't just gonna let them cure him, they'd have to force it into him. Slug then cracked his knuckles before he powered up, a crimson red aura surrounding him as he began walking towards the three. Vegeta, Trunks, and Piccolo themselves then powered up as they got into their fighting stances, as round 2 was about to begin.
Now, let's take our time and enjoy this.
Suddenly, they all disappeared. Explosions and sonic booms of power and energy rang out everywhere, across the ground and sky, as Slug fought in a 3v1 against Piccolo, Vegeta, and future Trunks. Krillin, still watching from below, couldn't even keep up with the ongoing battle. To him, it looked like just a bunch of massive streaks of red and gold energy clashing all around the sky. The three fighters up above were using all of their power, trying to find any opening to strike Slug and to get him cured, but he completely parried all of their attacks. He was fully on guard, not letting any of them get the chance to sneak up on him or anything like that. He also made extra sure to avoid the antidote, keeping an eye on it as he also continued fighting. Trunks and Piccolo passed the cure to one another as they fought Slug, that way he couldn't just go after one of them to destroy it. They would pass it to Vegeta as well, but knowing the prince, that would not be a good idea. Slug was quickly getting angered at all of this going on, as they just kept getting back up. He decides that he's done trying to torture them. He'll just kill them all now, before they get a chance to heal up again. As Trunks went in for a punch, Slug grabbed his arm and threw him into Vegeta, sending them both to the ground. When they tried getting up, Slug slammed them both back down on top of one another with one hand, while in the other he charged a massive amount of energy. Slug then yelled as he went to throw it, but Piccolo quickly fired a blast at Slug's, causing it to explode on Slug before he could throw it. Slug, along with Trunks, Vegeta, and Piccolo, were sent back by this explosion, with the force being enough to make Trunks fall unconscious, back to base, and even dropping the antidote out of his hand and onto the floor as well. Slug noticed the sound with his insane Namekian hearing, and began to fly towards the future warrior to destroy the cure. Just as he was about to reach it though, he felt something wrap around his entire body. Piccolo went beyond his maximum, into Kaioken times 90, also using his stretchy arms to hold Slug in place in a full Nelson. He knew he couldn't hold Slug like this for much longer, as Slug began fighting to break free like a feral beast. Vegeta then pushed his damaged defeated body off the ground and grabbed onto the antidote, clutching it in his hand. He didn't want to help out these pathetic Earthlings, but right now he had zero choice in the matter. Plus, this Namekian was the one who broke his arm earlier after that robot did before, so if he could do anything to get his revenge, this would be it. Vegeta then yelled as he charged towards the Super Namekian, as Piccolo yelled as well.
Vegeta, do it now!
Vegeta roared as he completely threw the antidote into Slug, not just injecting, but full on stabbing it into the Super Namekian. His blood began to gush out and spread everywhere as Piccolo finally let go, falling back to base and down onto the ground. Vegeta falls back to base as well, with Trunks waking back up, and all three of them watch as Slug starts violently twitching and spazzing out as the cure begins to take its effect over Jiro's drug. He falls to his knees, screaming and clutching at his head like a feral animal before he falls to the ground, unconscious once again. Krillin then comes over, helping up Piccolo, Trunks, and Vegeta, before Piccolo healed all of them but Slug. After what happened last time they tried to heal him, they've gotta be careful. Krillin agrees, with Vegeta just flying off after not only getting his arm broken by 18 and Slug, but having to fight alongside Piccolo and Trunks as well. Trunks then grabs the unconscious Slug, throwing him over his shoulders and telling Piccolo he's gonna bring him over to Kame House, where Goku had been moved to, because the androids were still out looking for him. Piccolo nods, but meanwhile something lurks deep in the shadows, watching them. Cell is watching the two, but mainly watching Slug, looking at him and knowing that he can use him later. Piccolo and Trunks then fly off, with Piccolo going to the lookout and Trunks going to Kame House. Slug would be laid down next to Goku, with Yamcha and Trunks trying to tend to them as best they can. After some time, Slug would wake up and felt around his neck and chest, where he had been stabbed by Jiro's drug and the cure, before asking Trunks Trunks, what happened? Trunks then began to explain everything that happened, and Slug is just shocked at himself. He gets up and walks out of Kame House, flying off towards the lookout. He soon arrives and sort of just hides away to meditate. Meanwhile, Piccolo is down on the earth below in Ginger Town, encountering Cell for the first time. Even though Piccolo is much more powerful here, along with having the Kaioken, things are not as simple as you may think. Cell can also use the Kaioken, managing to use it to get on the same level of power as Piccolo. The two would actually begin to scrap evenly, but for the most part, this fight kind of plays out as it does in Canon, even with both parties being way stronger here, and Cell manages to escape using the solar flare. On the lookout, Kami is terrified of what he's sensing. He's horrified to find out that Slug, Super Namek, and Gene is inside of Cell. Cell might actually be seen as Slug here because of that gene being present, which has some very bad, and I mean very bad implications. Kami, upon sensing this, calls Piccolo to the lookout immediately. Piccolo will then soon arrive, and the two begin to talk, and it goes sort of like this.
Why did you call me up here, old man?
Do you not sense that thing down there?
What thing? Oh my god. What is that?
Yeah, that. Kill it. No, don't kill it. Completely destroy it. I don't want to see that thing in the afterlife. Do you understand?
Piccolo nods, beginning to really comprehend the massive threat that Cell is here. Slug even stops his meditating, being horrified himself at sensing his own gene in Cell. Goku and Gohan, who were on the lookout as well, were also shocked at sensing Cell, while Vegeta and future Trunks go into the time chamber to train for the threat of Slug, the androids, and Cell. Piccolo then flies off towards Kame House, where pretty much all the Z fighters were, telling them all that there's this guy that might be a bit of a problem. At the same time Piccolo is warning them, the androids show up to Kame House. They ask where Goku is, and Piccolo tells them that he's not here. 16 then begins scanning and confirms this, and 17 is pretty mad, considering they came all this way here for nothing. He says that they should just blow this place up, but Piccolo challenges them to a fight. He brings them to a set of uninhabited islands nearby, before he powers up into his Kaioken times 50, rushing the android. 17 blocks his punch just in time, beginning to scrap with Piccolo. Even though he is not fused with Kami here, Piccolo has gotten more powerful since he fought against the android after the battle against Slug. The duo go back and forth, with Piccolo bursting into higher levels of the Kaioken like times 75 as he goes in for attacks to deal more damage to the android. Imagine this like the God to Blue switch that we saw used during Dragon Ball Super, but Piccolo obviously going from lower levels of the Kaioken to higher levels as he fought. But anyways, they continue battling before they punch each other back and start panting. They get ready to fight once again, but Piccolo senses something nearby that makes him sweat even more. He and 17 then turn to see Cell, who's smirking at their looks of confusion and terror. Piccolo can't even move as he's paralyzed in fear. His jaw drops to the floor as he basically shits himself seeing Cell here. If you guys enjoyed part 7 of what if Lord Slug was sent to Earth, then make sure to check out some of my other videos as well. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.